So today I'm going to be talking about science inquiry and how it's used in education. So I want to start off by addressing what science of inquiry is, and it's the diverse ways in which scientists study the natural world and propose explanations based on the evidence derived from their work. So in education, science inquiry is providing students with activities where they develop knowledge and understanding of scientific ideas, as well as an understanding of how scientists study the natural world. So really it's showing students what scientists really do and how they can be scientists as well. So the next question I want to talk about is, why is science inquiry important to the field of science? Science inquiry is a powerful way of understanding science content. Science content is significantly enhanced when ideas are anchored to inquiry experiences. So understanding how the natural world works is at the heart of how students learn. It's important for students to learn how to ask questions and use evidence to answer these questions. It's also important for them to learn how to conduct an investigation, collect evidence from a variety of sources, develop an explanation from the data, and communicate and defend their conclusions. This is a way that students are scientists. And it's important for students to understand that they're not just, scientists aren't just people who have test tubes, who, do those little mixtures, that they really dive into their research and they collect data and they analyze that data and they make conclusions, they make predictions and make hypotheses. And so it's really important for students to understand that in the science world. One of the resources that I use to teach others about science of inquiry, and to really, if I ever have any questions, I go to this site, and it's learner.org, and I'll try to put it into the screen somewhere. You fully understand science of inquiry and how to incorporate it into a classroom is not an easy task. So this website is very helpful to me because it answers almost any question you can think of when it comes to the topic of science inquiry. It discusses how to launch inquiry exploration in your classroom, designing the exploration, how to assess inquiry, and so much more. So that is definitely a site I recommend to save to your favorites so that you can always have to come back to. So the first lesson, the district lesson that I have chosen that I think is an excellent example of science inquiry is this lesson right here. It's talking about hidden colors. So it's what colors are hiding in green leaves, and this is from the Olathe School District. It's a 4th grade lesson. The materials you'll need are fresh green leaves, glass jars with covers, spoon, coffee filters, clear nail polish remover, and paper clip. So the procedure, you tear up a leaf or two, you crush completely with the spoon and place in a jar. Then you pour enough liquid nail polish remover in a jar to cover the leaf. So this is obviously something, just a teacher demonstration type thing. Then you cover the jar and you let stand overnight. Then you carefully pour the liquid into another jar. You cut a strip of filter paper about 2 centimeters wide and longer than the jar's height. You place the strip of paper in the jar so that it touches the liquid. You push a straightened paper clip through the filter and place it across the top of the jar to hold the paper in place. Then you leave the jar uncovered overnight. So the observations and conclusions. So these would be the questions that the students would answer. They would observe what happens each time you look at it. So what can be seen on the filter is one that they would answer. Do you think there was more than one color in a leaf? How many colors? What colors other than green do you observe? What do you think would happen if you tried the experiment with red, orange, yellow, or purple leaves? Try this experiment again in the fall. So why I thought it was a good example of science inquiry was because you're not just giving the students these random facts about the colors that we find in leaves. We conduct an experiment as a class where we get to be the scientists and we get to collect the data on what happens, and they get to make their own conclusions from the experiment, and then they also get to make an educated prediction if they used a different color leaf and what colors would come out of it onto the coffee filter. So it's really letting those kids see the observations, see it happening. They get to really understand how science works in our natural world. That's why I think it's a really good lesson for science inquiry. All right, next I'm going to talk about a lesson that does an acceptable job of doing science inquiry in the classroom. And this is another one from Olathe. It's another 4th grade one, and it's comparing and contrasting prairie and forest biomes. So you start by reading aloud to the class America's prairies and grasslands. You discuss prairie biomes, and then you give them a worksheet that goes along with the book that you read, where they just put down the things that they listened to you say about the book. Then they want you to reread America's prairies and grasslands and discuss and have students record the information about prairies needed for the compare and contrast chart. Then they want you to distribute a book to the students. It's a Web of Life book. They want students to work in pairs to compare and contrast a forest biome as described in the Web of Life with the prairie biome. It's not a bad lesson at all. I like the concept of comparing these two biomes. I think that's great for kids to do. The thing that I don't like about it is the kids don't get to explore anything. Instead, they're told all the information by the teacher. Basically, it just needs more inquiry. They need to be the ones that are researching it and figuring these things out on their own with the help of the teacher. So how I would adapt this lesson to make it a more science inquiry lesson would be, so we live in a prairie grassland biome, so close to our school is a walking trail that would be great to walk the kids down, let them take a little clipboard with their notebook and jot down notes that they see in the biome, what they noticed, and they get to make the observations. Then I would allow them to get on a Symbaloo that I create, where they can research information about these two different biomes. They can look at pictures, they can go to teacher-approved websites, but they're really diving in to see for themselves what is to be learned from the forest biome and the prairie and grassland biome. Another thing that you could do is to find an online virtual tour of maybe a forest biome where the students can make their own observations and jot down notes, and then you can have them compare and contrast. This way they're doing the research, they're not just getting told all this information. You can still have a discussion about what they found to make sure that they are finding appropriate information, the correct information, not false information. But this is letting them be the scientists. I really like the idea of having them go out. We live in a prairie biome, so letting them go out and just see a real life example where they can make their own observations. So that is all I have about science of inquiry.